interesting, something I talked about a little bit in some previous seminars, where I've talked about fundamentalism often not being the problem, but being the solution to a problem. Just like actually a symptom. Often the reason why Lacan said that Marx was the person who invented the symptom is within the medical world, initially a symptom like the flu was evidence of a disease. So you saw the flu and you knew, oh, this is an outburst of the virus. Yep. But actually the flu is not the virus, it is the body fighting the virus. The symptom is not part of the problem, it's the body's solution to a problem. Hence, sometimes if you get rid of the symptom, the person dies. You even get this in depression, where some people who take antidepressants are more prone to kill themselves. So there's a higher sense of suicide on antidepressants. And one of the reasons is because the depression is not necessarily the problem, it's the solution to a problem. That's a very important thing. But anyway, when I met you, I got the feeling that your religion and your religious perspective, you're very dedicated, very focused on it, but that it was not something to directly critique as if it was wrong, because it was actually holding you together in some way. But first of all, would you say that that was the case before we move on? Or
I mean, that setup of problem and solution, that does work for me, because I think in some ways I always felt like I needed a certainty, and that doubt was a problem, and probably my fundamentalism, and I grew up in this, and this is all I really knew. Maybe some of that was the solution to that problem of unsettledness and not being okay within myself.
And do you think maybe without, you can go as personal or not personal as you want, but that, the idea of God the Father, some of the stuff that was going on with your relationship to God the Father was connected in some way to your own experience of your father.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy to go personal on that. That's a significant
Do you want this to be a therapy session for you or anything? A public,
I've already gone through a lot of that, right? I love my dad, but I also hated my dad, and that that relationship was so core for me, and the tension there and the abuse. When I co-officiated his funeral, my brother wasn't going to speak at it, wasn't going to say anything until I told him we're going to tell the truth, and I really needed to do that. And so my relationship with my father has always been tied up in my view of God as a result. That angry God, that God that I didn't know whether it was going to come around the corner and get me.
Yeah.
Right? Because that was kind of always the feel. That was always like being on shifting sand. And that's impacted my whole family.
Yeah.
But I can only really speak for myself, and the trauma that I experienced in the midst of that, and the confusion, and trying to figure out some kind of answer that made sense of that.
Yeah. Because I knew someone, a friend he had a very strong, what we would call fundamentalist religion, very sincere religion. And he was a smart guy. He would go out to evangelism, said the same thing as basically trying to help save people from hell, etc., etc. But he lost his religion through a set of circumstances. One was he was beaten up at one point, and things didn't work out for him. He had maybe a slight kind of psychotic break of sorts, a little bit. Various things happened, and he just lost his faith. But he hadn't really worked through what was inside it. It was holding him together. And again, I talked about this in a couple of seminars ago, but the problem was, without that fundamentalist religion, but without having worked it through, he then ended up killing himself. Because it was it wasn't the case of, the religion's wrong, And we have to get rid of that and treating it just purely on an intellectual level. Yes, there's an intellectual level, and we can believe our religion or not, right? But at a deeper level, there's also something else going on. And if you, and this is connected to then the work of paratheology, is instead of coming in and going, either, what's right about your position, what's wrong about your position, it's also a sensitivity to going, is this holding you together in some way? Is there a trauma that you need a space to begin to be able to process?
Yeah.